بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We are continuing in Treatise for the Seekers of Guidance by Imam Al-Muhasibi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and this is session number 11. Session number 11. Alhamdulillah. So we left off, if I'm not mistaken. We left off on the following statement of Imam Al-Muhasibi rahimahullah. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا الله وإياه بعلومه في الدارين آمين. ثم رم جهازك وافرغ من زادك وكن وصي نفسك ولا تجعل الرجال أوصياءك واعقل أمرك وتيقظ من سنتك فإنك مسؤول عن عمرك. قال أبو أمامة رضي الله تعالى عنه لو عقل ابن آدم عن ربه كان خير له من جهاده. So he said, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, basically it means, he says in the footnote, أصلح ما تحتاج إليه في آخرتك. So it means like, basically get your affairs in order. Know that whatever it is that we're going through in life, we're eventually going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whatever we need in order to prepare for that, he's saying, prepare for that. وَافْرُغْ مِنْ زَادِكَ means basically, again, same thing, prepare it and use this thing that you've prepared to get ready for the hereafter. And then be the one who takes care of yourself, essentially. And don't rely on, how do you translate this? Don't rely on other people, essentially. But we have to understand it. Like sometimes, obviously, we rely on other people. But in the end of the day, we have to give advice and good counsel to ourselves. Okay? Yeah, we go to people of knowledge. We go to people of piety. We go to people that we trust. We go to people that we look up to and all of those kind of things. But in the end, we stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by ourselves. Or at least we're responsible for ourselves. Inshallah, some good righteous people will stand with us and they'll be there too, and maybe they'll help us and so on and so forth. But in the end, we're still responsible for ourselves. And I think that this is sometimes one of the challenges for people who are trying to improve in their relationship with Allah, is that we oftentimes in the course of doing that, we look for people that we look up to. We look for mentors, we look for teachers, we look for all of these kind of things, which is really good and really beautiful, and we should do that. And yet, at the same time, we're still responsible for ourselves. Like, it's not like, oh, I found this teacher I really love and I really like, so now I can just, not do anything. Like, no, we still have to, inshallah, they'll help us, but we still have to do our own work. وَعْقِلْ أَمْرَكَ وَتَيَقَّدْ مِنْ سِنَتِكَ. So and have aql when it comes to what it is that you are responsible for. Okay, so like you have all of these things, this situation that you have, these responsibilities that you have, use your aql about it. Right? I'm gonna again, when we stand in front of Allah, we have certain things, we're responsible for them. We don't divorce ourselves of them. I'm responsible for my own worship. I'm responsible for my own intellect. I'm not going to let other people think for me. I'll take advice from them, sure. I'm going to take counsel for them. We defer to them in many times, but I'm not going to completely divorce myself from my own intellect. Right? I'm going to think about things. I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet, and this is part of our own responsibility. So wa'qil amrak, like have a good understanding of the situation. Perhaps you could probably also understand it like, no, that's probably more likely interpretation here. وَتَيَقَّدْ مِنْ سِنَتِكَ is, and wake up from your sleepiness. Right? لَا تَأْخُذُهُ سِنَةٌ وَلَا نَوْمٌ. Right? So don't like this haze that you're in. Wake up from this haze. So all of this part is really like, take charge of your own affairs. Have himmah, have ambition, have, I am this human being, Allah created me, and Allah created me to worship Him and to know Him, and He gave me this guidance and He gave me this religion, and I'm going to take hold of this thing for myself, and I'm going to take it seriously, and I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to put in effort, and I'm not just going to let it go passively, you know. Passive income is fine, but passive deen is not fine. Like passive, we have to be active in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to keep pushing. He says, فَإِنَّكَ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ عُمْرِكَ, because you are responsible for your own life. You know, you're responsible for your own life. In this regard, there's two good footnotes here. One of them is a story of a tabi'i. His name is Muhammad ibn Ka'b al-Quradhi, radiallahu anhu. And he died about 108 after Hijrah. And it was said about him that in the area of Medina, he had tremendous properties and lands, and he had a lot of wealth. Okay? Some people might not like this one. I'm just warning you in advance. He had a lot of wealth. And it was said to him, ادخره لولدك. They told him, like, invest this and take care of this so that you can pass it on to your child. Okay? He said, لا. ولكن أدخره لنفسي عند ربي وأدخر ربي لولدي. He said, they told him, you know, take care of all this wealth you have and then you can pass it on to your child. He said, no. Rather, I invest it for myself with my Lord, and I save for my child his Lord. Or my Lord, basically, right? Like I leave my child, I leave to Allah. And me, I have this wealth, I'm going to spend it in the way of Allah, so that that's my investment. My investment is not for my child. So I put my investment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, donate it, give it away, everything else. And then I leave whatever, my child has Allah. Similar thing is said about Umar ibn Abdul Aziz radiallahu anhu, that they told him this kind of thing. And he said, no, I don't leave anything for my children. He said, if they're bad, then I'm not going to be the one that helps them in their bad. And if they're good, then their taqwa will take care of them. They'll be fine. Again, some people, it's okay. Not everyone has to agree on everything. So these are areas of mazhab, yani. People can have different approaches to them. And inshallah, kullu khair. Another one, the Prophet ﷺ on this topic of that we're responsible for our own lives, as we know, famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the feet of the person will not move on the Day of Judgment until they're asked about four things. عن عمره فيما أفناه وعن علمه ماذا عمل به وعن ماله من أين اكتسبه وفيما أنفقه وعن جسمه فيما أبلاه. So the person will be asked four things on the Day of Judgment. Until they're asked these four things, nobody's going anywhere. Right? So the first one is on the person's life and what they spent it in. On their life and what they spent it in. You can say, in a sense, that everything that comes after it is pretty much it's like another layer of that, right? The biggest one is your life and what you spent it on. That's everything, right? And then he says in the second one is that the knowledge that they have and what they did with it. So they have some knowledge. What did they do with that knowledge? I asked someone recently about this topic a little bit, because anyone who's been in the world of Islamic studies, like traditionally, knows the problem that all of the people who have been in that world are going to be faced with. And that is that you become obsessive and dysfunctional. Why? Because you're accustomed to seeking like knowledge all day long, and no matter what happens in your life, it's never going to be enough. So every single stage of your life, you're going to say, I didn't study this thing, I didn't study that thing, I need to do this thing, I need to do that thing, and it's never going to end. So if anyone's going on this journey, just warning you in advance, this is this is what you signed up for. The rest of your life, you're gonna be like, man, well, I didn't do this book, and I didn't do that book, and I didn't study this book, and I didn't do that. And then you're going to meet Egyptian scholars, and they're going to reinforce it for you, because they're going to tell you things that are like just unbelievable, Like I asked one Hanafi Shaykh in Egypt one time, because anyway, the Hanafi school has like 1 million books. You know, it's been all over the Muslim lands for the last 1,000 years, more than that, 1,200 years, right? All of these lands, all of these empires, all of these places. There's literally like hundreds and hundreds of books. You know, and sometimes you're like, well, can I suffice with one book instead of reading the other one and stuff like that? So I asked the Sheikh, I'm like, Sheikh, like if we read, like there's 4 or 5 primary primers in Hanafi school. You know, they're like the main starting text. I was like, maybe if you study one, like you don't have to study the second one. You can just go to like the next level, you know? And you go to the next level and like, you know, one at that level and then one at the next level and one at the next level. And they kind of like suffice each other type thing. So I asked the Sheikh that. And he was just like, no, sorry. You have to study all of the books of the madhab if you want to know the madhab. I'm like, how are you going to do that? You know, like, is that even, it's not possible. I can't do that. Like, but he's like, sorry, like, you can't do it. That's not my problem. Right. Like, he didn't say that. I'm not, this part of the conversation's over now. This is all hypothetical. But the point is, like, it's not someone else's problem if you can't do it, right? It doesn't change the reality. The reality is, if you want to know the madhab, you study all the books of the madhab. You don't study 1 or 2 or 3. You have to read like 10 or 15 or 20 of them at least. And that's not all of them still, right? So I'm saying that give you this despair. They give you this despair. So I asked someone about it. I was like, you know, I feel like the last 15 years of my life have all been the same. And that every day I wake up and I'm like, I need to study this. I need to study this. I need to study this. I didn't finish that yet. And this one still needs to get finished. And he gave a very simple answer. And he said, yeah. And it said, the hadith, technically speaking, from a hadith science perspective, is a little bit under conversation. But the scholars like the hadith. And that's the Prophet ﷺ said that the one who acts upon the knowledge that they have, then Allah will give them the knowledge that they didn't have. And that was basically his answer. You know, it's like, yeah, you can do that. Of course, we're all, you know, we all love scholarship and we can all do that forever. But the one who acts upon what they know, Allah will give them knowledge that they didn't, right? So the second one that he says, they'll be asked about their knowledge and what did they do with it. And they will be asked about their wealth, where did they get it from and what did they spend it on? That's one question. It's like one set. Their wealth, where did they get it and where did they spend it on? We could spend a lot of time in that, but one thing that I'll say, when it comes to our wealth, of course, a really baseline question is, am I getting my wealth from a halal job in the first place? That's a really simple question. But perhaps a more everyday relevant question or issue is, do I have sidq in the work that I'm doing? And this doesn't mean that you have to sell your soul to the company that you work for and all this crazy stuff that we have in corporations and stuff now. But do I at least have some level of sidq and honesty and like I'm tasked with a certain thing and I'm going to do it. One imam, I remember someone asked him, I was surprised. I was like, mashallah, that's good. You answered that straight. Someone asked him, I was there, he said, I work as a security guard and oftentimes there's not a whole lot going on. And like, we just kind of fall asleep, you know, like we take a nap and we wake up and a good portion of my shift is spent not actually doing what I'm paid to be doing, right? And he's like, so what's the situation with the money that I'm getting from this job? And the imam was just like, yeah, it's haram. Like the money you're making is haram. Like you were getting paid for a job and you didn't do it. So you basically took money from your employer without fulfilling your part of the contract. So it's not acceptable for you. I was like, okay, alhamdulillah. Point is, we should have sidq. It's an amana. If we're tasked to do something, we should do it. Again, don't take this to necessarily like the extreme of corporate America. If we live in a diverse world, you know, I was talking to someone recently, they said they work for a company that has people that work in the US and it has other people that work in Europe, you know? And they said the Europeans are always shocked at the Americans. They're like, what's wrong with you people? Like, you don't ever leave work. You're just always working. And they're like, can you do this right now? And they're like, no, I can't do this right now. I went home. I'll do it tomorrow, you know? It's like America is really crazy with this thing. This is too much, subhanAllah. Allah help us. And then he said, and your body and how you used it. Your body and how you used it. Okay. Then the author, he said, قال أبو أمامة رضي الله عنه لو عقل ابن آدم عن ربه كان خير له من جهاده. So he said that Abu Umama said, رضي الله عنه, if the son of Adam, I don't know how to translate that, عقل عن ربه, like if he really understood properly how to have his relationship with his Lord, or her relationship. Like, this is the things I need to know. These are the things I need to do. This is how I put things in their proper place. This is how I organize them. This goes over here. This goes over there. I'll put all the things in the right place, have sound judgment, sound intellect about how I relate to my Lord. And then if they do that, it's better for them than jihad, because they put everything in the right place. This is like, you can't overemphasize the importance of this, really, actually. And I think about this a lot. May Allah protect us from misguiding people, is that all of it's Islam. Like, anytime we go to anything and we hear anything and we watch anything or we see any clip or whatever else it might be, all of it is Islam. Inshallah, all of it is good, but it's not all necessarily in the right place. And we could, like, actually legitimately waste huge portions of our lives thinking about the wrong things and emphasizing the wrong things and being concerned about and worried about and paralyzed by the wrong things, if things are not in their right place. So this is why to have understanding of it is better than to make jihad. Some people, they have like a lot of passion and they have a lot of zeal, but they put it in the wrong place. So actually what they end up hurting more than they benefit. May Allah help us. واعلم أن من جعل همه الآخرة كفاه الله أمر دنياه كما ذكر في الحديث المروي تفرغوا من هموم الدنيا ما استطعتم فإنه من كانت الدنيا أكبر همه أفشى الله عليه ضيعته وجعل فقره بين عينيه ومن كانت الآخرة أكبر همه جمع الله له أمره وجعل غناه في قلبه وما أقبل عبد بقلبه إلى الله عز وجل إلا جعل الله قلوب المؤمنين تنقاد إليه بالرحمة والمودة. So Imam Al-Muhasibi here, he mentions this narration that, again, it's not the strongest narration, but it has important meanings in it that are supported by other narrations. So he says, know that whoever makes the pinnacle of their concern the hereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of their current life. So there's the akhirah, which comes later. Literally, it's not which comes later. There's the dunya, which is now, and it's lower. It's closer in a sense. And he says, whoever makes their concern their hereafter, then Allah will take care of their dunya. Some people will hear this and they'll understand that, like, you just don't care anything about any worldly issue. If you don't care anything about any worldly issue, you're actually not attending to your hereafter. You understand what I'm saying? So, like, we have a responsibility connected to the hereafter to have concern about certain things in this life. Like, if I need to work and I'm like, no, I'm not going to work because, like, I'm just about the akhirah, brother. I'm going to pray all the time and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm just about Allah, not about anything else. It's like, but part of your relationship with Allah is that you are about something else, like you have other responsibilities that need to be fulfilled. So don't take this into some strange place. But the point is that the person that their primary concern is their relationship with Allah and the consequence of that in the hereafter. He says, and if they do that, then they'll be like this narration that's here. And the narration says, empty yourself from concerns about this life as much as you can. Because whoever has the issues of this life as their greatest concern, then basically their affairs will be scattered and poverty will be in front of their eyes. And whoever makes that hereafter the greatest of their concerns, then Allah will bring things together for them and He will make their wealth in their heart. And whoever goes to Allah with their heart, to Allah, nobody does that except that Allah makes the hearts of the believers Like basically the hearts of the believers get in line with them, with mercy and with love. Okay. So he says what? You put your emphasis on the hereafter, put the emphasis on the hereafter, focus on that, and go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the entirety of your heart. And if you do that, then it's counterintuitive, right? For many people, they're like, the harder I work about this dunya, the more everything will come together and I'll get satisfied. He said, no, it doesn't work that way. The more emphasis you put on the hereafter, the more things will come together and they'll be okay. And the more, and then also take your heart and go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you do that, then the hearts of people will be with you too. It's very beautiful, subhanAllah. We were talking with some of the loved ones about how, like sometimes we do things. We should pay attention to this. Okay, I'll give you a homework assignment. Maybe you'll see it. Sometimes we try to do things and there's just no tawfiq. You know, some of the shaykh, we ask them, Shaykh, can you make dua? They just say, may Allah give you tawfiq and taysir. And you live your life and you're like, oh, I get it. Like that's actually what you need. You need tawfiq and taysir. Your tawfiq is like Allah put things together for you and you aligned with it. And taysir is that it became facilitated. And sometimes we try to do something and none of it is facilitated. Like it's just hurdle after hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. It's like the life equivalent of hitting all red lights. You know, it's like you're trying to drive somewhere in your life and everyone is a red light. And you're like, subhanAllah, it's never taken me this long to get to this place before. And it happens in life sometimes, right? And that's like, there just wasn't facilitation there, right? And sometimes we try to do something and it's just muyassar. Like we try to do it and everything just falls in place. It's like this piece just goes here and that one goes there and like all of it just settles properly and it moves very smoothly. And how does that happen? Is that the person is connected primarily, even though they're doing what they need to do in their life, their primary connection, their primary concern is the hereafter. Because when we rely on ourselves, we come up short. This is la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. No, there's no might or power except with Allah. So we rely on ourselves, we come up short. When we do what we're supposed to do and we rely on Allah and we turn it over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then everything falls in the places that it needs to fall into. May Allah give us taysir and tawfiq, and may He guide us to that which helps us to put things in the right place. Inshallah. He continues, he says, وَاحْذِرْ يَا أَخِي وَاحْذَرْ يَا أَخِي الْمِرَاءَ فِي الْقُرْآنِ وَالْجِدَالَ فِي الدِّينِ والكلام في التحديد وكون من الذين قال الله عز وجل فيهم وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما. He says, beware, my brother, being argumentative about the Quran and always being in debates about the deen and trying to define too much things that really shouldn't be defined too much, specifically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His attributes and his names and stuff like this. There's a level at which we understand what it means to say that Allah knows everything. We just leave it at that. You don't have to go deeper and try to like dig too much. It's not a dig, wrong word usage. This is not a jab against like kalam or something at all. But it's just to say, like, we shouldn't be arguing about these things. We shouldn't be arguing over matters of deen. We shouldn't be arguing over the Quran, stuff like this. What's the difference? The difference between arguing and trying to find something out is really what you're trying to do in the end. Am I trying to win or am I trying to find the truth? And this can be very subtle, you know, because the nafs, our base self, is also very tricky. So, you know, we might get into a conversation and we think that we're having this conversation so that we can get to a deeper understanding of the truth. But actually, there's just a lot of nafs in the conversation. Just a whole lot of like nufus just all over the place, filling up the entire room. There's like, if you were to close your eyes and imagine all the nufus in the room, they're like crowding everything. It's like those cartoons where like someone gets really huge and they take up all the space and everyone's like, there's no room. It's like all this nafs in the room with the argument. It gets crazy. The reality of it is that it's pretty simple. I was talking to someone about it this morning, actually. What was it? What were we talking about? It's basically some issue. I don't remember what it was, but it was some issue, and he was saying like, yeah, and then it came up like this idea of these WhatsApp groups that everyone's on, and how there's like never-ending debates about everything that people shouldn't even be talking about in the first place on their WhatsApp groups. And then they went to the masjid, and this person said this, and this person said that, and they had like a little discussion around like, why are you doing this in the first place? Like, if you want to know something about the issue, you sit in a classroom and research the issue. I was like when I used to be in the masjid and people would come and they want to argue with me about fiqh. They're like, so what's the right opinion on this? And I'd be like, well, Hanafi school says this, and the Shafi'is say this, and the Malikis say this. And they're like, yeah, but what's the right opinion? Like, that's not really the way this works. Eventually people like they got frustrated a little bit and then they figured it out. Like, he's not going to give us, he's not going to tell us, it's not the way it works. It's not the way that fiqh works. It hasn't worked that way unless you're a mujtahid imam. So a lot of the issues that we're talking about, like, there's not even really anything to talk about. It's like, okay, you want to know more about this topic? Then you sit down and read a couple books, talk with some people of knowledge, have a really basic conversation, nice conversation that doesn't have any emotion in it. Isn't like just all belligerent and like, this is my opinion, but I think it's this way and I think it's this way. Why? You just move on. Like, figure out what the deen is and move on. And if there's multiple opinions, alhamdulillah, there's multiple opinions. And then we move on. And we do what we need to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, so don't argue about these things and don't try to define things that don't need to be defined. And be from those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described them as. When ignorant people talk to them about things, they say salama. They just say salam. And he said, وَالْزِمْ الْأَدَبْ وَبَاعِدْ الْهَوَى وَالْغَضَبْ وَعْمَلْ فِي أَسْبَابِ التَّيَقُّظِ والمراقبة والمراقبة غاية قصدك واتخذ الرفق خدمة والتأني صاحبة والسلامة كهفة والفراغ غنيمة والدنيا مطية والآخرة منزلة. What a beautiful, Imam Al-Muhasibi had incredible language, subhanAllah. He said, وَالْزِمْ الْأَدَبْ. And whatever you're doing in all of these things, try to have good adab, good character. Yes, I understand the irony of being someone who doesn't have good character telling people, and we're reading from the book. وَالْزِمْ الْأَدَبْ. Have good adab. And stay away from desires and anger. Stay away from desires and anger. Basically, when we have good adab, there's a level at which we're very centered. This is not just like some new philosophy stuff. If someone has good manners and good character, they're going to be very centered. They're going to be very grounded. They're going to be really steady. And because of that, when it says, and stay away from desires and stay away from anger, what happens when those things happen? When we get angry, when we have desires that take us over, basically what they do is they agitate us. They agitate us and we get unbalanced. Then we start to do things that we shouldn't be doing, right? And our goal actually is to get back to a place of equilibrium. And this is when we're really connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's when we have this equilibrium. Because what's the only thing that remains stable in all of this whole thing? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the only thing that's stable. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything else moves, everything else changes, everything else. So how does the person hold that rope that keeps them steady? Is that they're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, have this adab, and part of like when we have good character is that we've reined ourselves in a little bit, and we're paying attention. Okay, don't do that, don't do that. Oh, you're getting a little bit agitated right now. Why are you agitated? Okay, it doesn't matter why I'm agitated, just don't act on it. We figure out why it is later. But don't do anything crazy, don't do anything dumb, don't do anything you regret, just control yourself. And this self-control is extremely, extremely important. I think it goes without being said in a lot of detail because we've said it 10,000 times that the technological world that we live in, a huge purpose behind it is to make us agitated. Because once we become agitated like that, we're more likely to buy things in order to take the edge off of our agitation. So the whole point of these, or we're more likely to invest huge amounts of time looking at things that don't matter, because it just like makes us feel better at some level, but then it makes us feel worse too, and we can't really figure out why. It's because the whole thing is bad. May Allah help us to figure out how to balance that. وَعْمَلْ فِي أَسْبَابِ التَّيَقُّظِ. It's a very interesting statement. وَعْمَلْ فِي أَسْبَابِ التَّيَقُّظِ. Act upon the causes of awakening. Act upon the causes of awakening. Like, know that certain things will bring life to your heart and to your soul, and act in those things so that we can continuously be giving life to ourselves. One of the best things for that is to be in company of good people. And he says, and do all of that. وَالْمُرَاقَبَةُ غَايَةُ قَصْدِكَ. They put this like that on purpose. So it's interesting. Like, so you're doing these things. You're having good adab, staying away from anger and desires. You're acting upon the things that bring life to the soul, to the heart, to the soul. And we're doing all of that while the state of muraqabah is our greatest concern. State of muraqabah is like we have this awareness of the reality of our relationship with Allah, that He is raqib, that He is watching and aware of everything that takes place. And so I'm doing all of these things from the perspective that I know that Allah is watching. Then he says, وَاتَّخِذَ الرِّفْقَ خِدْنًا. He says, and take as your friend gentleness. Take as your friend gentleness. It's really nice, isn't it? Take as your friend gentleness. Some of our cultures are really just too harsh. And as one of our teachers always says, when you have excessive rigidity, you have hypocrisy. Excessive rigidity breeds hypocrisy, because that's what it does. Like, when everything is too rigid all the time, then people start to do things behind. What is hypocrisy? What is nifaq? Right? Nifaq comes from the tunnel, that the little, like, say like the gopher, and it digs it's over here, and then it digs its tunnel, it shows up on the other side. This is a nafaq, right? It's the tunnel. So part of hypocrisy is that this is what hypocrisy is. Like, you thought the person was over here, then they like showed up over here, then they showed up over there, right? This is nifaq is. But why does a person do that? Because there's so much pressure over here, they had to pop up over there, right? And so when we have these like cultures that are very rigid, ways of doing things that are extremely rigid, then you start to find this as a very common practice. People have like second lives, they have dual personalities, they have all this other kind of stuff, because the situation was too much. You had the tension had to be let go somewhere. And subhanAllah. So he says, so take gentleness as your friend. Take gentleness as your close friend. And Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, إن الله رفيق يحب الرفق ويؤتي بالرفق ما لا يعطي لغيره. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rafiq, He's gentle, subhanahu, and He loves gentleness. And He gives through gentleness what He doesn't give through anything else. So sometimes like the Prophet ﷺ gives a principle, it's so profound. And like what we need to do is نحكم القاعدة. I don't know how to say that in English. Like, there's a principle, I'm going to use this principle and I'm going to implement it in my life. I'm going to have a situation in front of me, and I'm going to be able to look at the situation and say, I could do it this way, or I could do it that way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves gentleness, and He gives through gentleness what He doesn't give through anything else. So I'm going to go with the gentle way. So at this point, I don't know what's a good word for it. Sayyidina Ali, Sheikh, all these sheikhs. That's weird. Like, we're forcing that principle into action. Right? We're making it the boss over the situation. That's a good way to put it. Sometimes it's easier to translate Arabic into like slang. It just like works better, you know. So we're going to make that principle the boss in the situation. Who's going to be in charge of the situation? This principle that the Prophet ﷺ gave me. And that principle is Allah gives through gentleness what He doesn't give through anything else. وَإِنَّ الرِّفْقَ لَا يَكُونُ فِي شَيْءٍ إِلَّا زَانَهُ وَلَا يُنْزَعُ مِنْ شَيْءٍ إِلَّا شَانَهُ. And that gentleness is not added to anything except that it makes it beautiful, and it's not taken from anything except that it disfigures it. It makes it ugly. The reality is that if this is not our default way of doing things, it's going to take work. Okay, so now we get the second side of this. We're talking about rifq, gentleness. Initially, we're talking about it in relation to others, right? Another side of this is having it in relation to ourselves. So maybe we're trying to be gentle with others. We know this is the way that we should do things, but it's just not really what I'm used to. Like maybe I just wasn't raised like that. That's not the method that I'm accustomed to. And whatever, like I'm just used to this like harshness and this roughness and stuff like that. But I know that I should be more gentle. We're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way. But again, who's going to be the boss? The boss is going to be the principal. And that is like, okay, I reckon I'm going to be on a 20-year, hypothetically speaking, I'm going to be on a 20-year journey on that one. So I know that I should be this way. But I also know that probably every time I sit with anyone and engage with them, I'm going to make mistakes on this, and I'm going to go home afterwards and be like, "Anta ghabi, why'd you do that? You shouldn't have done it that way. You were too harsh on that situation." Then the gentleness has to go from being outward facing to being inward facing. And be like, okay, you could beat yourself up over this until next year, but it's probably not going to help that much. So he says, so take in all of this that you're doing, take this gentleness as your close friend. And take a ta'anni sahiba. And take as your sahib. Sahib is the one who's like really close with you, right? Take as your sahib ta'anni. Ta'anni it's a really beautiful word. Sometimes in English we say like deliberation. Think it out a little bit. Think it through. Take your time. Don't be in a rush. التأني من الإيمان والعجل من الشيطان. That to have kind of like some deliberation and some, there's some other good word in English that I can't think of right now. To do that is from belief. It's from good iman. And to be hasty and in a rush is from shaitan. And again, like this happens all the time because the worlds we live in, the demands are tremendous. Sometimes I think about some of these shuyukh have a lot of students, I'm like, okay, so let's say person X, I'm not talking about like popular figures, but people who have like people who look up to them, and they're reaching out to them all the time, asking them for advice and stuff like that. So person X probably gets like 1,000 messages in a day. Theoretically, it's totally possible they get 1,000 messages in a day. How do you respond to all those messages? Sometimes like I'm just going about my day and like I'm in school and like kids are starting to get anxious and like someone's texting me something, I'm trying to respond real quick and then like go back to the classroom and you realize anytime you do that, like whenever it's like a hasty response, you look back afterwards and you're like, oh, I didn't really deal with that the way that I should have. Like there were some words that were left out. The answer wasn't really full. It didn't really get dealt with properly, But all that's from that hastiness is from shaitan. Not being hasty doesn't mean going necessarily that you're like really slow. Okay. So one can, there's a psychological component to it, right? Like someone could actually go slowly, but they're hasty because they're unsettled. The same thing about being unsettled and stuff. They're unsettled internally. So there's a hastiness to the way they're doing things, even though it's not happening fast. And someone else might be able to do things relatively, like they say that the Prophet ﷺ would walk so fast that they're putting effort in to try to keep up with him, and it's as if he's going downhill. But they look at him and they don't see it that way. Right? So he's able to move quickly, but without haste. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Ya Rabbi, allow us to see him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Can you imagine? I want to see that walk. Like it's one thing to read about it. I want to see that walk. I want to see what it looks like, you know. Hopefully it's like one of our friends or someone we love, and on the day of judgment, you know, like that the Prophet ﷺ will see someone we love on the day of judgment, and he'll walk like that to them to take care of them. And it'll be like the moment you're like, oh, that's the description we used to read in the books. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So take deliberation as your companion. والسلامة كهفا والسلامة كهفا. Not really sure how to. Any of the shuyukh, how would you translate that? السلامة كهفا. I think that's how you could translate it. Just that's the translation. Did you guys see the translation? That they were trying to put the baby down and put the cloth down and like very gently put the baby down, trying to take care of the baby. And that's like وَالسَّلَامَةَ كَهْفًا وَالْفَرَاغَ غَنِيمَةً. And if you have free time or like some availability, then know that that's a great blessing. It's a ghanima. It's a great blessing. Have a little bit of free time, a little bit of time to think about things, a little bit of time to slow down. وَالدُّنْيَا مَطِيَّةً. And dunya as your vehicle. The dunya is our vehicle. So it's like, sometimes people are really negative about this life. One of the righteous people, they said, if it wasn't for this life, we would have came in the hereafter with nothing. Right? Like this is where we do it all. This is where we do the things that we need to do. So whatever we have in this life is what we have in order to take us to better things in the next life. How many minutes do we have till Maghrib? Anyone? 2. وَالْآخِرَةَ مَنْزِلًا. And take the hereafter as your rest, like your place that you take rest, your menzil, place that you stop at, place that you settle in. Take the akhirah as your menzil. Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah, he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى لَمْ يَجْعَلِ الْمُؤْمِنِ رَاحَةً دُونَ الْجَنَّةِ. Hasan al-Basri, he said, Allah didn't make for the believer a rest except paradise. He didn't. You can understand. It's not all negative though, you know. Like we have moments in this life that are glimpses of paradise. That's why some of the righteous people, they said the one who doesn't experience paradise in this life, they won't experience paradise in the next life. That there's moments that we have in this life, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, that are moments that are glimpses of paradise. Glimpses of paradise, right? Maybe we should just stop there. Okay, we'll stop here. هذا وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Any questions or comments or anything before we close and pray Maghrib and then have dinner? Anyone? Yes. Can you say it again? I can't hear you. Why? Why would you pay for it?
I guess I'm really asking. I've got argumentation
Mhm. Um, I mean, specifically what he was talking about here is argumentation on matters of religion. But being argumentative in general is not good. It's true. But I think some of that is dictated by culture too. Like sometimes places are expecting you. Some places, if you buy from them, they're expecting you to do that. So you do it a little bit and you get the proper price and you move on without like getting in a fight about it or something. Or you just don't buy it. Or you know that the person's just and so you don't argue. Like Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, he wouldn't allow it, you know. He set the price at what he thinks it should be. And either you buy it or you don't buy it. There's no. And if you wanna like debate about the price or something, he's like, look, I made the just price. If you don't want it, you don't take it. It's fine. And there's no argument. You just don't get it. Or you get it and you choose, you know. And I think it's hard to give for example, sometimes we might be, especially as people who live in the West, in America, who tend to have a lot more money than most other people in the world, we might be in situations where we might be in a place where we know that the price that's being asked for is more than what it would normally be asked for. But I'll just pay it anyways and like make the intention of sadaqah. I know that this person just raised the price by $1. I also know $1 doesn't really mean a whole lot to you, but it means a lot to them. And so I just make a niyyah and give them $1, you know. So I don't think I don't know how to. Sometimes things can have different layers to them. Sheikh Fuad, do you have any comments on it? Okay, anyone else? You might have come in. Yes. I don't trust my phone, it has the wrong city. So you guys have to tell me. Yes? Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم استرنا بسترك الجميل اللهم استرنا بسترك الجميل اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين والدنيا والآخرة ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم ارزقنا حسن الخاتمة اللهم ارزقنا حسن الخاتمة اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك اللهم يا عالم السر منا لا تهلك الستر عنا وعافنا واعف عنا وكن لنا حيث كنا اللهم أيقظ قلوبنا لك ونبهنا من الغفلة عنك اللهم أيقظ قلوبنا لك ونبهنا من الغفلة عنك اللهم اجعل آخر كلامنا لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله عدد كمال الله وكما يليق بكماله سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Would also like to formally welcome Sayyidina, our dear friend and Ustad Ali Nasruddin and his wife Shakla and their beautiful baby, mashallah, Hasanito, to the Majlis. They're visiting from Chicago, but they're like, mashallah, do a lot of similar work to the work that we're trying to do. And it's been a really nice weekend with them, alhamdulillah. So we welcome you to the Majlis, inshallah, many, 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 many times until you move. And come here, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. Inshallah, someone can make adhan and then we'll pray Maghrib. Barakallahu fikum. Who's gonna make adhan? Who'll make adhan? Not this side. This side. Someone on this side make adhan. Who's gonna make it? Sayyidina? No? Imam? You want to use the mic? Sheikh Honest? You want to use the mic? Or you want to just do it? Bismillah. تصلي بينا؟ تصلي بينا؟ Good. You lead the salat, inshallah.
Can I get some one-on-one with you later today?
Inshallah. Sure thing.